The Warlock Celestial is a great example of how Warlocks don't necessarily have to have a dangerous or even evil patron. I talked to Mike Merles about this new subclass for the Warlocks and how it's changing things up.
Clerics, what we've established in the cosmology of Dungeons & Dragons, is that clerics are tied to divine beings, gods, or sort of concepts imbued with the divine. So it might be like the silver flame from Eberron. The Celestial, though, is, rather than being a divine being per se, it's a celestial being. So it could be something like an angel, a Chiron, a unicorn, or anything else that's a powerful, good-aligned creature, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a god. And so that's the difference between, for a warlock, warlocks tend to make pacts with specific individuals who are sharing power with the warlock, rather than a cleric gains power that's granted to them by the divine. And also with celestials, we sort of assume, obviously, it's a celestial, it's some sort of good aligned creature. So it's something, the celestial warlock, compared to other warlocks, is a healer. They gain Cure Wounds as one of their sort of baked in first level spells, and one of their first class features allows them to heal. They also deal with radiant energy. So, I mean, obviously you can play an evil Celestial Pact Warlock if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But the game kind of assumes that Celestial means either good aligned or having to do with radiant energy and healing. And so compared to a cleric, where when you think of a divine spellcaster, you think they're going to be tied to a domain like the cleric class does, where the god's portfolio influences the follower's magic. The Celestial is more specific about being about radiant energy, and it's almost like it's less refined compared to a cleric's ability to wield magic. And cosmologically, it's more of a brute force way to get magic with a pact. And that's kind of how we think of the warlock in general. That the warlock pact is like it's almost like a hack in the system of magic, rather than the sort of accepted or intended ways in which people use spells. And in my mind, instead of my headcanon, that's kind of why the warlock came into D&D later on. It sort of took the universe of D&D a while for people to figure out how to use magic this way, as opposed to the sort of more traditional spell slot based ways of using magic. And so yeah, the Celestial, you could imagine it might be something like especially say a Coatl, who might have agents in the world. And so the Coatl has these pacts with its agents who are going out and working on its behalf. So they're good aligned celestial style creatures who aren't gods. And because of that, one of the things I like about warlocks and this idea of pacts is it can be more personal. A Coatl might have a desire to protect a specific person, a specific family or city, where gods are more remote in Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that's something which a DM can play up, or a player could really bring into the game, this idea that the patron is more personal. Might be someone you have more direct conversations with, rather than speaking directly to Gond or or Thor or something like that, where they're much more remote and more abstract. Yeah, so we kind of created it with this idea of someone wanting to play more the heroic warlock. Warlocks traditionally have a sinister bent to them in the game. If you look at the player's handbook, the initial patrons are either things that are traditionally very evil, like a fiend, or the Great Old Ones, or something that's kind of dangerous, like maybe not evil, but not necessarily friendly, like a Fey Lord. So we wanted to kind of balance the scales a little bit and say being a warlock does not inherently make you villainous, or doesn't inherently make you dark and sinister. That celestial beings, obviously it's a celestial pact, they can also create pacts. And so it's kind of balancing out the storytelling possibilities. And I also like the idea of introducing a new healer into the game. Essentially, that you can run a warlock as your healer if you don't want to play a cleric. You can play a character with a very different casting tempo, who can still bring a lot of healing to the table for the group.
The Warlock Celestial is in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You can purchase that book on dndbeyond.com and also earn some pre-order bonuses as well. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thanks for watching.